Hello and welcome again to Bloodworth Miniatures. My name is Kyle and today we're painting the Silent King. So we're going to start off with the bases using livery green. So we're just going to dry brush this on here. I'm using an old makeup brush, I've already primed everything with Games Workshop Chaos Black. And we're just dry brushing each individual piece here. There's the base where the throne sits and the two menfirs. So we're just going ahead using I got an old shop cloth here for the dry brushing. You'll see the shop cloth a lot throughout this video here. And we're just getting in there, putting some livery green. And so now we have some Canoptic alloy. Again, we're dry brushing. I'm using a slightly bigger dry brush now. We're basically dry brushing everything. We're dry brushing the sides of the menfirs, dry brushing both the menfirs on the sides with the Canoptic alloy. You can get a similar effect by brushing the Canoptic alloy on and then going ahead and using null oil. This is sort of like a speed paint, I guess. So for most of the metal parts, we're just going ahead and doing a dry brush. Just try and save time here. The main reason why I'm trying to save time is I actually trying to paint this over the course of just 2 days. To try and get it done for a game on the weekend. So now we're just dry brushing with a smaller makeup brush on Szarekh here, and you can do the same thing for the Pharaons. Just making sure all those little details get a little bit of the Canoptic alloy on there. Just picking up some silver. The other thing with the Canoptic alloy is it makes a good base coat for some of the other things we're going to be doing later. So it's just a good first step. And again, doing the dry brush is mostly just for saving time. Here's the actual bottom part of the throne, getting back in with the big brush here and the Canoptic alloy. Sorry about some of the camera work. I'm still getting used to painting in front of a camera, but basically right now I'm just trying to get all the little stairs. Because I'm dry brushing pretty vigorously, I've got my finger on the bottom of the stairs just sort of supporting it. You can see here, we're just dry brushing the little sort of like legs of the throne, I guess you can call them. I'm aiming for sort of like a zenithal, but also doing it this way leaves a lot of the details that are in the deeper crevices black, similar to if you put a wash over everything. So again, it saves quite a lot of time. Really like the way this effect works, especially on like a lot of the segmented pieces, like where they have really big separating lines. And works really well for accenting like some of those details, again, without the same time constraints. The other thing here is this like metal area makes up a great deal of the model, but it's not where I want the focus point to be. Like my goal is for the focus point to be on the like object source lighting glow that we'll be adding in later, and on the Pharaons and also on Szarekh, like on the Silent King himself. So, this time we're putting in here, it saves us a lot of time on the whole paint job, but we're getting it done quick and dirty for the parts of the model that aren't quite as important, like as the main Pharaons and Szarekh and the object source lighting that we're going for. Oh, and the Satan, like on the which I'll be doing a lot of extra work on the Satan specifically, and we'll go over that when we get there. So the next step, we're going to airbrush with Caliban green. So all of the sort of like object source lighting, like all the little energy tendrils and a lot of the orbs and things, we want to make them green to stick with like the Necron's theme. I know some people do the energy with different colors. But we're just going to stick with the traditional green because that's what I did for the rest of my army, and I do want them all to match. So we're getting all these tendrils, Caliban green, just a liberal coating with the airbrush. This is just to save time. Like, I have Caliban green in a pot, but we want the base color to be down. A little bit of splash over onto the base doesn't really hurt. I mean, the reason we set it up as like the livery green is partly to match the rest of my army, but also it's because it adds to that object source lighting effect, so it just saves some time. So after we get the tendrils, we're going to get these orbs on the menhirs up with the green. Again, we're building up here, so we're starting with our darkest color, which is going to be the Caliban green, and we'll be building it up afterwards. So I don't believe I do it at this stage. I might get this done off camera, but there's a ton of orbs on the throne, like on the base of the throne. There's some orbs. There's a big orb in the center, just behind the pharaons, just behind the Satan. I also put this down on the Satan himself as a base color because he's going to be basically pure energy. So after putting down the Caliban green, we're going to grab some FW white ink here, and this is what we're going to do to start with building up the highlights. Basically, do the Caliban green, and then we do a zenithal highlight with the white ink. And then that's going to pave the way for that object source lighting effect again. And again, you can do this all by hand. Like, you can brush it all out with brush strokes. But like I said, I'm trying to save some time here because I'm trying to get this done on a short time leash. So normally, I'd have some flexibility with this, but I was trying to go quick. You can see as well, I went ahead and spray painted the cape there. So next we're moving on to moot green. So we're airbrushing this over the white ink. What this is going to do is give us a really bright zenithal, like it's going to go over the white and give us that object source lighting really well. And the Caliban green is going to stay in the darkest areas. And the reason we put the white ink down before going right to the moot green is because, as you can see, it comes off quite bright. It's a lot brighter with the white underneath. If we had just tried to go over the Caliban green, we wouldn't be able to get quite as high of a bright tone without going into really high opacity. So we'd have to do a lot of layers on there. I'm going back here with the moot green, and I'm just doing some extra object source lighting on the bottom of the chassis. The way I figure is that the energy tendrils that are underneath the chassis are going to reflect onto those legs. Here you can see I'm kind of showcasing that. Now we're going to skip ahead here. So again, my camera work's not perfect. At some point I came back to the model and started really working specifically on the Satan. So we skipped a couple steps here. It's already had the Caliban green painted on. It's already had the moot green and the white ink paint airbrushed on. What we're doing right now is we're actually using the Warpstone Glow contrast paint, and we're really watering it down, and we're just putting it into a lot of the muscle cavities, trying to get some definition. We're really going to be building up some highlights on the Satan. I want it to be the brightest part of the model. It also sits like near the very top of the model, so it's important to get like a lot of contrast with the centerpiece of the model. So getting this in gives us our dark tones, bringing them back from the Caliban green, just because a lot of the Caliban green got covered up. So we're waiting for the Warpstone Glow to dry on the Satan. We're going in and base coating all the stone areas black with Abaddon black on all of these stone details. Again, this is sort of like with the Caliban green deal, we're putting in the base color here, paving the way for brighter highlights. I decided basically that on the menhirs on the front and on these two sort of like pillars here, that it would be the similar kind of stone effect. And also on the supporting structures around the satan. I also painted them black to go ahead and start off with. I decided to make it out of a similar stone color, but just not cracked. As you can see, I'm using really watered down paint here to get some good coverage on the menhirs. Again, this is just the base coat here with the Abaddon black. We're going to be coming back at this with dry brushing to bring out a lot of these cracks, and we'll go through a couple other steps to really brighten everything up and get it to have that energy effect going on. As you can see, where I've overpainted with the dry brushing, I'm just painting over it with the Abaddon black. It covers it up fairly well, and just making sure to fill in the cracks and not leaving any silver behind or any moot green where I don't want it to be. Just getting that all filled in. Just being careful to go through these different segments and fill them in. Once the black's all dry, we start filling in the cracks on the menhirs with just some really watered down white. I'm using Vallejo's Game Color Ivory White, and we're just filling it in. In some cases where the white's a bit thick, I just kind of wipe over the edge with my thumb, just to leave the white behind in the cracks. But it really just depends on how bright you want these areas to be. Basically, the plan is to fill these in with white and then dry brush over everything with Caliban green afterwards. So it's going to bring this white back down to a green color anyways, so it's not super duper important that if there's any surface white remaining like on the black areas, it's totally fine. We're just doing this to punch up the contrast for later. You can see with some of these bigger cracks, I'm just taking my finger to dab away some of the excess white on the menhirs. But again, it's okay to have some white. And this is, like I said before, a speed paint. So primarily I'm trying to save time, but still get a good visual appeal on here. And there's a lot of cracks here, so part of that saving time might be that it looks a little bit messier than you would if you were being a little bit more deliberate with your brush strokes. But in all honesty, the final effect speaks for itself, so I'll let you be the judge of whether or not you want to take the shorter route. But yeah, it's going through here, filling up these cracks. So while the white in the cracks is drying, we're going to go ahead and paint on some gold here. We're using Vallejo Game Colors polished gold here for these gold trim and the shoulder pads. Again, this is to match the rest of my army. I'm putting this on the shoulder pauldrons and some of the key details on the staves, on the Farons and on Szarekh, to really bring your eye towards these guys. There isn't going to be too much gold on the rest of the model, just some key details on the chassis here and there, on the chassis of the throne here and there. Just getting all these details. Again, we want these to catch the eye. got to make sure to get some gold on Ceres's crown, obviously, since he's the king. So now we're going in and we're dry brushing with the Caliban green. Again, the white needs to stay in the cracks, but otherwise, you know, you can be pretty liberal with this dry brush. It's going to cover up the white. It's going to look a little bit brighter from some of the white's overpainting, which is totally fine. We're trying to give it sort of a stone look, so if it ends up being more of a gray green, that's totally okay. We're going over the menhirs and the sort of obelisk shapes on the throne. Just getting in, and obviously we want to stay away from anywhere that we've got that bright moot green. We don't want to damage that nice color that we put in with the airbrush. So you're just gonna be careful to paint around that. But otherwise, you know, we're just going over all this stone area to it's almost like buffing to get like a marbling effect going on. There's a lot of like texture on these sculpts that just get the dry brush just picks it all up and really makes it pop out. But yeah, we're just going over it and getting that done. So just with the top edges, some of the key details here, I've added a little bit of white in with the Caliban green, and we're just hitting the very tops of stuff just to give it a bit more of a zenithal. These are some pretty big parts of the model, and we definitely want them to look correct at the scale. You can see I'm just kind of going around the top edges there and really kind of making them pop out a bit more with the dry brushing. Sort of like a fast edge highlight, really. Again, trying to save time on this. This is more of like a speed paint of the Silent King. If I was going to try and put a name to it. And we're doing the same kind of thing on these obelisks. Getting some of the gold details on the throne now. I felt it's good to break up some of the silver with the gold pieces. Really makes a big difference. It makes everything look a little bit more deliberate when you have some details that are picked out as like highlighted details. Again, I want the attention to mostly go towards the pharaohs and Ceres, so a lot of the gold is in very small pieces just to break up details. I don't want any section to have too much gold on it, because then it might take attention away from the characters that are actually riding on the throne, and have everyone focus mostly on the throne itself. But at the same time, you don't want to have just everything all the same color, because then it looks too flat, and you lose, you know, a lot of the sort of details just sort of get blurred out. I really especially like some of these round shapes that are built in. A lot of Necron shapes are sort of like circles and squares, so having some of these circles stand out and having some of the squares stand out is I think really important to you know, to keep it on theme. Now that the paint's dried on the Satan, we can go back in and add some more details, filling in some gold highlights here. As you can see, I've already painted the areas that I want to dry brush with Caliban green and black. With the Abaddon black, now I'm dry brushing them Caliban green to get that stone effect going on again. Similar kind of effect is on the menhirs and on the obelisks there. Just going in and doing almost like an edge highlight and getting, there's like little cracks and everything that pop out. adding a little bit by brush here, just because I don't trust myself to dry brush around the area that I airbrushed, and I kind of did this out of order. But I've got some canaptic alloy that I'm adding in here, again, just to kind of break up the details. Base coating with ivory white on this gem on the chest of the Satan because we're going to go ahead and end up making it red like the box art. So going ahead and making it white now means we're not going to be fighting with the moot green to get towards a red. We're also going to start doing some highlights here. So similar to how we put white in the cracks of the menhirs and on the obelisks, we're adding white to the muscle definition on the Satan here and on the little details on his chest to try and get sort of a zenithal highlight going on, but a very sort of controlled zenithal highlight, creating very specific muscle definition. This is where I spent probably most of the time on this paint job, because I knew that the Satan was going to be sitting at the top of the model and it was going to be taking a lot of attention. There's basically two places where I put a lot of time on this model versus just sort of trying to find ways to save time, and that's on the Satan and on actually Szarekh's cape rather than Szarekh himself. The idea is basically that since the cape envelopes him, it would bring all the attention on to him. So, and yeah, so that's where we're putting the bulk of our time. I'd say if I just left this stuff moot green and I painted the cape green or something simple, I probably could have finished the whole paint job in maybe 5 hours, but because I decided to take some time to really build up these highlights on the Satan and on the cape, I think the total time spent is closer to 8 hours. So, you know, it depends on you, right? If you just are going for, like, you just want it on the table, then you definitely don't have to spend this much time. The way I kind of did it was like a 50-50 split. I did like a speed paint for a big bulk of the model, and then for sort of the key features of the model, I went ahead and put the time in, and I think the results turned out pretty well. But yeah, this is just kind of how I decided to sort of spend my calories, so to speak, as far as the model is concerned. The only other place that I really spent a lot of time would probably be on the blades for the Silent King and the Pharaons. So, but yeah. So now we're using the new technical paint Szarekh Glow, and this is where all of the white is going to start to make sense. Because when we add the Szarekh Glow over the white, we get this sort of really bright yellow-green color, and it makes all of the work that we did with the white really kind of blend together and blend in with the moot green, and it looks perfect. It's exactly what I was aiming for. It saves time. Like like I said, I put a lot of time in with the white on here, but it still saves a lot of time compared to if I had just tried to blend out all of these colors, like using yellows with the moot green, which you definitely can do still, and you might get a more sort of refined look that way. But overall, I'm still really happy with the way this turned out with the Szarekh Glow. So now we're using the contrast paint Blood Angels Red. The reason I'm using the contrast paint Blood Angels Red for this gem is because it pools, and also it dries a little bit glossy. As you can see with my finger there, I was able to kind of like take some of the paint off and then just reapply it when you overpaint. The contrast paints are pretty forgiving that way, so that's good. Now I'm taking the Tesseract Glow and I'm putting it over the obelisks. I'm going to also put it over the menhirs. It's going to go ahead and give them the same kind of effect that it did for the... It's going to go ahead and give them the same kind of effect that it did for the Satan. And it's going to make all the little cracks look like they're glowing, and it's going to make all the sort of like hieroglyphic text look like it's glowing, and really just kind of make everything look a lot brighter and full of energy, as you can see there. So we just gone ahead and did a thick layer of this over the menhirs, and it's really made a big difference. And I'm just using a thick brush. I'm not really looking for control. The idea is to get it in the cracks over the white, and to get it over the stone so that it, you know, pools up on the peaks of the stone to make it look like it's just just full of energy, which is exactly what we were going for. And it pretty much turned out exactly how I was expecting it to, and again, saves a lot of time. You know, just repeat this 4 times. These menhirs, like every step having to repeat it for each one of their sides, you really start to notice after a while you're just doing the same thing. But you know, it all turned out really well in the end, so I'm totally fine with it. Again, like I said, I'm not being super careful right here. Anywhere where this Tesseract Glow goes pretty much looks right. Just making sure that we're not leaving any of the white behind is the most important part. So you could always go back in later if you wanted to and darken this up with another like dry brush of Caliban green if you thought it turned out too bright. I was pretty happy with the way it looked. It was pretty much exactly how I was picturing it, so I didn't go ahead and do that, but you know, to each his own. So now we've just got a touch of yellow, and I'm just working it into the bottom of the gemstone on the Satan, just to kind of create a contrasting color. And then off camera, because I can't do it on camera, I put 2 little dots of white just to give it that round gem look. Going back in with the airbrush and hitting a few spots here. I hit some spots with Caliban green, and I went over them with white, and I'm just filling in the moot green now to fill those areas up. They're just some spots that I missed earlier, but I figure you still want to see it on camera, so filling that in now. With the airbrush, I wouldn't be too worried about overspray, especially with these bigger orbs and stuff, because it just adds to that object source lighting effect. But don't leave too much white behind either, right? So just getting that moot green in and really adding to it. I decided to add the moot green all onto the thrusters as well. All the energy is green on these guys, so it makes sense that whatever's propelling them forward is also green, and got that big old orb that's underneath the main chassis there, and filled it up with moot green as well. Painting a bunch of details white here, getting orbs on the stabs, eyes, just anything that I want to be really bright on the characters. You can see here that I've glued the characters down to some bases. This is just to make painting them easier. The box doesn't come with bases for the characters. The characters actually glue right onto the the character's glued right onto the throne itself. So we're just filling in the eyes and the orbs and again, everything we want to be glowy. The idea here is we fill it in with white now, and then we go over it with a Tesseract glow, and it's got that nice glow effect, just like with the Menfirs and just with the Satan, we fill it all in. There's these big, there's a little orb on the staff of the Silent King here. He's also got some orbs on his shoulders. I don't think I get this on camera, but he's got orbs on his cape as well, and those are all painted white. Again, the orbs on the Silent King's Talbert here. Again, he's going to be like there's the Satan and then the Silent King are sort of the centerpiece parts of this model. So we really want to kind of do whatever we can to make them stand out if we're able. Just getting some of the dots on the chassis painted white in preparation for Tesseract glow as well. Sorry again about the camera work here. I'm still mastering the art, so to speak. Just getting all these little dots on the stairs. I figure they're all going to be full of energy, so might as well use the Tesseract glow. It takes a bit of time to fill these in, but as you can see, I'm making clockwork of it, and the Tesseract glow, when you add it on afterwards, really makes it pop. It gives it sort of that galaxy look, which is pretty awesome. It's exactly what we're looking for. The brush I'm using, you can see it's pretty well used. It's a Tamiya model brush. It's not really the fanciest brush. I'm going with the Tesseract glow now onto these areas on the Silent King and on the Pharaons and on the chassis, filling them in with Tesseract glow. Tesseract glow is really the workhorse of this paint job. Like, I don't think I'm a bad painter or anything like that, but the Tesseract glow really did a lot of work for me, and so part of me feels almost like I'm cheating using the Tesseract glow because of how much it just makes all this energy pop out, and how much it does for the overall paint job. I love how my thumb is in perfect focus for this shot. And I wish the Pharaon was, but, at least you know what my thumb looks like. So that's always great. I promise I'm going to get better at this. So I'm painting the blades on the Pharaon's Caliban green now. This is in preparation for wet blending out some highlights later. So we're just got the two Pharaons, and for the Silent King, we're painting their blades up with the Caliban green as a base. Just getting that done now. Again, covering up any of the dry brushing or any of the Tesseract glow or any moot green or whatever colors might have overpainted. And just getting crispy dark green to start with. So I'm painting the cape now with game color royal purple. I'm wet blending highlights in using Vallejo game color warlord purple, and I'm alternating between highlighting into the warlord purple and highlighting into the game color orange fire. to get sort of like a iridescent sort of look to the cape so that it looks like it's shimmering with a few different colors. Unfortunately, I didn't catch all of this on camera, but I did quite a lot of wet blending here to slowly build up those colors, and you can see it at the end. So now we're moving into the Cryptek Armor Shade Gloss. So this is the wash that I've used. This goes really well over the Canaptic alloy to create sort of this shiny bronze color. And we go over a few selected details on the chassis with this, as well as over a few details on the Pharaons and on the Silent King himself. This matches with the rest of my army, and it breaks up the silver, so it doesn't look like it's all just one color. You have a few different colors because this is a shade. It goes over like areas that have been painted with moot green and still leaves behind a bit of the moot green colors, so it still looks like you still keep that object source lighting color for the most part. So there's that. I go over the gold as well, just to make the gold areas have a darker part as well as a highlight. And because it's gloss, it still shines gold really well, so you still keep a lot of that polished look of the gold, but then you have the sort of the shadows, the recesses collect all the shade, and it does a lot of work. For some of these like bigger panel areas, I do occasionally grab a spot of water to try and avoid some of the pooling on the big flat surfaces. The big flat surfaces having pooling on it would kind of make the model look very dirty, which isn't really my goal. So occasionally you'll see me grab a little bit of water and use that to thin it out a bit more. So here I am working on the cape again. I'm adding the polished gold onto some of the little details on the cape. You can see that orange fire color is on there. I think I still end up putting some more time into the cape after this. It's one of those things where it was really hard for me to kind of be happy with it, and I wanted it to frame the Silent King on his chariot very spectacularly. So there's a bit of back and forth with that. Here I am using the dead white, Vallejo Game Colors dead white, and I'm wet blending. So with wet blending, you're using very watered down color, and you're going back and forth. So I'm going back and forth with dead white, Caliban green, and Abaddon black. And basically, if you watch, you can see, but you're kind of just teasing the color back and forth to really get this smoothed out gradient. And trying to get this gradient, you can sometimes it's easier than others depending on the shape of the model that you're working on. But the goal, especially with these sort of like Games Workshop power weapons, is that you get like a glowing effect and a sharpness, like a look of sharpness, so that the even though obviously this is a plastic model, it still gives that effect that light is reflecting off of it and that it's very sharp and dangerous. So I'm just blending with the Caliban green and the white. Unfortunately, this shot's a little bit out of focus here, but you can see that I'm starting to achieve that thinned out blend. This is after about 5 minutes of working in the colors. It takes a bit of time to get this really looking good, but you know, I want these specific parts of the model to really stand out. So again, because it's centerpiece-ish, like it's a centerpiece model, but these are like the focal points of the model. I really want them to pop out the most. So this is where I put the most time. And you see I'm holding the brush very close to the bristles. This is a P3 basing brush. It's got some really good control and a bigger well, like a bigger body on the brush, so it can hold quite a lot of paint, which is really important for this part. Now, as you can see with the power weapons, you have sort of a lot of the time on the left or the right side, you'll choose to have it bright at the bottom and bright at the bottom, and then on the opposing side, you'll have it bright in the center. And these sort of like emulate that sharpness effect without without it really needing to be sharp. And it's a bit of a it's like how you do non-metallic metals as well is a similar kind of thing. So once you've blended out, like wet blended out the blade the way you want it, the final step would be adding like a crispy edge highlight, and just sort of makes that look like the light is really flowing all around the weapon, and that it's really made out of like sharp, shiny metals, and it gives that dangerous vibe. But yeah, that's the main idea here. The other thing with wet blending is a lot of the time it really looks bad before it starts to look good. You know, it's unfortunate, but it's just part of the process with wet blending, is that it looks messy until you get it like right where you want it. And it's kind of like traditional painting. When you're working on a canvas, you know, you're putting big swatches of color, and then you slowly refine them, and you slowly work in the edges, and you slowly blend them together until it's looking crispier and crispier, and then you kind of decide when you want to stop. You know, some painters, they just a very sort of like vague suggestion of the light moving around is all they're going for, whereas with others, you know, you're looking for a very crisp, realistic finish on what you're working on. And you know, I worked on, I think I spent about a good 15 or 20 minutes on just doing the edge highlighting for the Silent King, and a similar amount of time for each of the Pharaons to make the blades look really well. You know, just blending and blending and blending until I was happy with the way it was looking, and then rinse and repeat. I'm not going to show it all in this video just because it's a lot of the same teasing of the colors, and I don't really have any sort of interesting narration to put over that, but I will show you what they all look like at the end. And of course, we can't do anything on this model without adding a little bit of Tesseract glow to it. So we're going to put that over all the blades, and it's going to go ahead and turn that wet blending into, well, it's going to shave it down a bit, really kind of blend out the colors and give it that finalized, full of energy look that everything on this model has, which is exactly what I was going for. Here you can see, you know, we're adding it to the Pharaon's weapon. It just really adds the finishing touch on these characters and their weapons. And of course the video wouldn't be finished without some B-roll footage of the whole model for you to take a look at what the finalized product looks like. Thanks for joining us today on Bloodworth Miniatures. Again, my name is Kyle. Don't forget to take a look at the Patreon and slap a like, subscribe if you want. I would really appreciate the support, and give you some B-roll of the Silent King here for you to enjoy on the outro there.